Hi everyone, thank you for joining. My name is Kristen Brown. I'm the Marketing Events Manager with Ironside. I want to thank you all for joining the Customer Analytics for the Informed Executive webinar today. I'm just going to take a few minutes and introduce some of today's presenters and go over Ironside Group. Wynn Fuller is a Senior Consultant with Advanced Analytics. He'll be running through the presentation as well. Prior to Wynn, Ray Haddad, our account executive with Ironside, will briefly go over the history of the company. You can join today's discussion live on Twitter. Follow @Ironside Group, and we'll use the hashtag Predictive Analytics. If you have any questions during today's presentation, you can type them into the dashboard right on your screen, and all of the questions will be answered during the last 10 or 15 minutes of the webinar. Here are some upcoming SPSS training and events we have. As you can see, we have sort of a mixture of online training as well as training all over the states: Boston, DC, Atlanta, Lexington, Mass, and San Diego. You can both view a full course schedule and all of these events in greater detail online at our website, ironsidegroup.com. Now I'm going to hand things over to Ray, who's going to go through a couple of slides on Ironside.
Thanks, Kristen. Hi, everybody. I'm Ray Haddad. As Kristen mentioned, I'm an account executive here at Ironside. I want to go through a quick overview of who Ironside is and kind of what we do before handing it over to Wynn. So Ironside is a full-service business analytics firm composed primarily of industry-specific consultants that are able to understand multiple departments and job functions within those industries. Our goal is to partner with our clients to help them utilize business analytics in order to meet their needs. This includes services such as proof of concept, implementation, software sales, training, mentoring, and hosting and managed services. We are a premier business partner of IBM, meaning the solutions we map to the business are 100% comprised of IBM technologies. These technologies include business intelligence such as dashboarding, reporting, financial performance management, incentive compensation management, predictive analytics, and information management. We are an IBM partner because the solutions integrate seamlessly to the point where the client has as much flexibility as possible. So slide number 2 here just gives a little background of kind of who Ironside is, some specifics. We were founded in 1999 as a Cognos partner before moving over to an IBM partner, primarily in 2008 when IBM acquired Cognos. We are growing rapidly, and actually were recently named the 7th fastest growing company in Boston by BBJ's Pacesetters. And this growth has helped us build out offices in the locations that you see below. So that's some background as to who we are. If you have any questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to me. My account email address is rhaddad@ironsidegroup.com, and my number is 774-306-1490.
My turn, I guess. Hi, I'm Wynn Fuller. I'm a Senior Consultant Predictive Analytics here at Ironside. My background is I have a doctorate in econometrics, and I've been doing modeling for more years than I will care to admit. And I've worked at such places as Bain & Company and Staples Incorporated and a variety of other consulting firms. But my expertise is in building models, and more recently I've been doing that primarily with the SPSS tool set from IBM. So what we're going to talk about today is customer analytics, basically. And we're going to first look at the decisions that need to be made. There are a lot of decisions that you need to make as a person involved in managing a company. Decisions. Every day you need to make a lot of decisions, and we're going to look at how do you go about making those decisions. What do you need to know about your customers? How can you figure out more about your customers in order to make the types of decisions you need to make? And we'll talk about those a little bit more. And what are the methodologies you use that are available to you in order to make those decisions. And then we'll go through several examples of different kinds of decisions that need to be made and how customer analytics can help you make those decisions. There will be several examples, and Then we have summary and conclusions, as always, and then we'll let you ask questions, which hopefully we'll be able to answer. And then we'll talk a little bit about the Ironside offerings. So that's the agenda of what we're going to be talking about for the next half hour or so, half hour, 40 minutes. So to get started, what are the types of decisions that you're generally faced with? And if you're in the business world, you have something you're going to sell. What kind of product is it? What types of new products should you be trying to sell to whom? And how do your customers relate to the products you want to sell? And basically, how should they be how should they be packaged? How should they be branded? All of these are things that relate to your customers because they're the ones who are going to buy what you're trying to sell. Then where do you want to sell them? What types of sales outlets will work best for you? And there are a variety of ways in which you can sell products now. It's ranging from the age-old bricks and mortar, and there are a lot of decisions if you're going to use bricks and mortar. How should you set them up? What should they look like? You've got catalog sales. You've got phone centers, call centers, basically. How do you design things like catalogs, and what mailing lists? How do you personalize your relationship with your customers? And pretty much those same kinds of things apply to selling online over the internet. What's your site design look like? Should look like? How should that vary by the type of customer that you're trying to reach? So that's your sales outlets. And prices. Those are always pretty important. How should you set your prices on your on different products so that you can maximize your revenue? Probably, but more likely you want to maximize your profits. Basically, how should these prices change over time and different customer groups? How should can you get away with charging different prices to different sets of customers? Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. And what type of discounting should you be offering? Essentially, they often deal with the marketing decisions that need to be made. So then another type of decision is what marketing efforts are going to be the most cost-effective to you? And we'll spend a little time on this today. Basically, you have a lot of ways in which you can try to reach your customers through things like TV, radio, run a press, which is newspapers, circulars, signage in stores, if you actually have in-store signage, personalized contact, direct mailing of catalogs, brochures, postcards, letters, develop loyalty programs, email marketing. What are the best? What are the most cost-effective ways of doing this? And there's a certain type of analytics that allow you to figure that out. So that's help you make those kinds of decisions, because those are not often easy decisions. Then what do you know about your customers? Who are your best customers? Which customers are least profitable? Which customers tend to defect and why? Who are the cherry pickers? How can you group your customers? You can group them by purchase patterns, by sales potential, by current profitability or potential profitability, by geography or demographics. What do you know? And very often you know a lot about your customers, and you may not be mining that information to the best of your ability. So that's essentially another decision that you'll need to make is, what do you want to find out about your customers? How can you use that information? And then how do you forecast? Well, how do you predict what's going to happen in the future? Basically, the important thing is here to understand is that as far as forecasting is concerned, you not only want to know what's going to happen in the future, but you want to know what the you want to be able to understand how you can change the future by changing what you do. How can you be proactive and prescriptive as opposed to just simply reporting on what happened in the past, which is the way old business intelligence systems tended to work. They told you what happened in the past, and then they got to the point where they could tell you why that happened. But more recently, you spend a lot of time figuring out strategically what should you be doing. What's the most cost-effective thing for you to do? Those are the kinds of decisions that you make. What are the methodologies, typical analytic tool sets that you have in your quiver in order to be able to make these kinds of decisions? You've got a variety of customer analytics. We'll talk a little bit about these, segmentation models, acquisition and retention models, lifetime value models. And notice I'm talking a lot about models because that's what I do. Create models that describe what has happened in the past and why it's happened and how you can make changes in the future. That's for customer analytics. There's also testing, figuring out what worked and what didn't work. Split cell testing is a methodology for doing that. And then there are these other things called marketing mix models, which is where you figure out what mix of your marketing tools is the best one to use to achieve your goals. And we'll talk a little bit about marketing mix models as we go through this as well. And then pricing. We talk a little bit about pricing. How can you estimate your demand curve? What are the things that you need to look at in order to figure out what people will buy at various price levels for your products, how your customers are going to behave, and how they react to changes in what you charge them. And then there's also a bunch of other things: real estate and location modeling. If you're in the retail business, where do you put your stores most cost effectively? How do you forecast the future if you're more concerned with financial forecasting? And surveys. There's lots of survey research tools. We're not going to talk about that today, but there are a bunch of tools out there for that. And then there's this last thing called structural equation models that I'm not going to tell you anything about. Those are the things that you have available to use within your tool set, the methodologies you can actually use. And then what kind of data do you usually have? We usually have transaction level data. What's happened? Who bought what? When? Where? How? What were they charged? All of that, all the things that go typically with transactions. But then you also want to know what you did marketing. How did you try to influence your customers in the past? Because you want to know how well that worked. Then you want to know about your customers. Who are they? Who bought what? And what are their characteristics? Where do they live? What's their income levels, education levels? Things like that, customer information. And then where, as I said, location information, where are they located, or relative to where you're trying to sell out of if you're actually selling from a retail location. That's just one piece of information. How do those things mesh? For example, if you're a car dealer and you're located in an area surrounded by certain types of people, what are the most likely types of vehicles they will buy? That's just what I mean by location information, merging information about your customers and where you're located. And then what are the products you're trying to sell? You might have a variety of different products that can be tailored in a variety of different ways. What customers are most likely to buy what products under what circumstances? So that's product. That's the data that you actually have available. This is the beginning of the first example for customer analytics, and basically customer retention example. It can refer to retention or defection, how your customers going to stick with you and why. And so the answer is what is churn, which is a way of describing. I'll tell you what it is instead. Basically, churn or attrition is defined as the voluntary or involuntary loss of customers, clients, subscribers, human capital, whatever. People leave. People leave, basically. And churn rates in some industries can be as high as 30%, which is pretty costly. And certainly it can vary by market, it can vary by customer, all of which you can analyze. And it can affect any industry or organization in terms of profitability or productivity. And the basic bottom line is here, acquiring new customers is far more costly than retaining your current customers. There are numbers out there that allow you to calculate that in your particular industry or area that you're looking at. Retaining customers is much easier than getting them. So we prefer to target customer retention as opposed to almost anything else to do with customers. How do you keep the ones you've got? Acquiring them is costly. Retaining them is less costly. So that's churn, what it is. How do you prevent it? Well, this is where modeling comes in, essentially. You proactively and effectively reduce churn by targeting customer retention programs based on predictive modeling. In other words, you build models that describe what tends to drive people away from you. And if you can identify that, then identify why people are leaving you, then you need to figure out what you can do to prevent that. And modeling works very, very effectively here to do this, building models. And this is the process here of preventing churn. Is you first of all, you need to gather all the information. You've got customer relationship management systems. You've got customer usage. What are they using? If you're in the telecom industry, which ones of your products are they using? What are they buying? What are the financials involved with all of this? Surveying people is pretty important in figuring out what churn rates are, getting people understanding how people feel. What are the market and the demographics that they're in? What types of markets are the ones that tend to leave you? And are they high income, low income? Are they education, high education, low education? There are just a huge array of a variety of different factors that can impact your the likelihood that a customer will leave you. You gather all that information and you merge it together, and you need a pretty good, pretty heavy-duty tool in order to be able to do this. We tend to use SPSS Modeler to do most of our data mining here, and it's powerful. It can take information from a variety of different sources, use identifiers on the records themselves, the data themselves, and allow you to merge them together. Once you've gathered all your data together and merged it, you basically use modeling techniques, and there are a huge number of modeling techniques within SPSS Modeler, which allow you to identify the strongest predictors of somebody leaving you, somebody departing. Basically, you identify those predictors, and that's the same as determining the churn drivers, the things that drive people away from you. You then say, okay, if this is what's causing people to leave, what do I need to do in order to get them to stay? What will work? What will, if somebody is leaving because they've bought a new product and they don't like it at all? We can identify that as a particular driver of churn and say, okay, what do we need to do to make that product better for them, for those people, and make them an offer. Maybe reduce the price. Who knows? There are just a variety of different preventive actions that can be undertaken in order to get people to not leave. It's probably not possible to prevent everybody from leaving, because people tend to do things like move or expire, or all kinds of weird things can happen to people that mean that they just don't have any further need for your product. But some of them will be leaving because of things that you have done and you have some control over. And I need to identify those things that you have control over. And in order to do that, statistically speaking, in order to do that properly, you need to take into account all of these other factors, all of the other things that lead to people leaving you, and bring them into your model. And then you pay attention to the ones that you actually have some control over. So you're basically you got to be real careful not to identify some factor that's causing people to, not to identify some fast factor that, statistically speaking, is showing that people are leaving you, but have that be really correlated with something you have absolutely no control over, and it's spuriously measuring a correlation of why people stay with you or why people leave. So you've got to be real careful in the structuring of these models. Once you've actually built a churn model, you can then segment your people and score all of your customers, and it will give the technique will give you the likelihood that somebody is going to leave you. And once you know once you can identify those where the likelihood is very high that people are going to leave you, you can develop intervening actions and figure out what you want to do with them. How do you keep them? How do you get them to stay with you? So that's the overall technique of how you prevent churn. We have an example. I'll walk you through a fairly simple example. Basically, it's in the telecommunications industry, and this particular customer had just under 2% monthly churn rate, which is pretty high when you measure it in annual terms. The company had absolutely no idea who was going to leave until they actually left. So we had a sample of 15,000 customer records, and we mined those records, and we identified 43 distinct predictors of the probability that somebody would churn. And Then we got rid of the weakest ones and built a basic model that said, okay, this model will say, for any given customer, what is the probability that they will leave you? Okay, that is the customer. That's the model building process. And the example, the results that we got basically, this particular customer had 138 churning customers in a month. When you scored all of your customers, 71% of those who churned actually fell into the top 20% of those most likely to churn. So you're doing a pretty good job of identifying the churners if you can identify almost 3/4 of them in the top 20% of your scored or modeled customers. And we took that even further and said, okay, in the top 5%, you had 42% of all your churning customers fell in the top 5%. This allows you to identify a measure called lift. It was 831% lift. And what is lift? Lift is a measure of how well a model performs. It's basically saying you've identified almost half. If you looked at the top 5% of those scored, and what I mean by scored is the ones with the highest predicted probability, the 5% with the highest predicted probability that they would leave you. 42% of those who actually left you fell into that group. And as opposed to what you would expect, top 5%, you would expect only, if it was a random sample, you would expect only 5% of those who left, of those to actually be the ones who left. So this is where we get the 831% lift, which says you got a pretty good model going on here. You're really doing a really good job of identifying those who are most likely to leave you. So we were able to identify a precise segment of churning customers that churned at a rate 8 times higher than the average churn rate. And we could then do something about them. If this model had been in place prior to this month, the organization could have identified and intervened to potentially prevent a very large number of these monthly churners, rather than and this is really a measure of cost effectiveness. Rather than sending out a particular offer or something to every single one of your customers, you can identify those that you really need to pay attention to, the ones who are closest to needing something in the immediate future. So that's the power of this type of technique. And the recommendations were, coming out of this to the customer, that they should frequently update their usage data into the modeling process, and therefore keep your model very precise over time, because things change over time. Every month or every 2 or 3 months, update your model, and then basically every week run your model to predict those who are likely to churn, and within the course of a month, and get a group of customers that you need to pay attention to, essentially. And basically, you integrate this process into your customer service business process. You get your call center or whoever it is, or your people who are sending out direct mail or emails or whatever, to pay attention to the customers that are identified as most likely to churn. And you also flag those previously scored and contacted customers and exclude them, so you're not constantly sending out the same message to a particular customer and aggravating them even more by sending the same message to them time after time after time. That's just a little caveat there. And then once you've done this for a little bit, you actually use the SPSS tool, other SPSS tools that are available to you to evaluate the effectiveness of the different retention methods used, the different ways in which you contacted different types of customers. How effective were they? What do you basically, you test and validate your model, you test and validate the results, and get them, and basically continue. It's a continuous process. You don't just do it once and then let the model sit there. You constantly evaluate the effectiveness of what you're doing. So that leads in basically to the next topic, which is how do you go about doing various kinds of testing? And one of the kinds of testing that I'll talk about now is this thing called split cell testing. And what is split cell testing? Well, split cell testing is a methodology, a fairly simple way of testing the impact of making a change in some way you've done something in the past. It's It's a time-based analysis. You basically you basically take your situation as you have it up to one point in time, make a change, and evaluate what happens as a result of that change. Sounds pretty simple, and it conceptually is pretty simple, but it's not the simplest thing in the world to set up to set up a split cell test so that you get valid results coming out of it. But it's applied to select groups of entities, customers, stores, people, anything that you can track over time. You can break into a couple of groups, and you basically into test groups and control groups. And it doesn't require any much in the way of sophisticated statistical techniques in order to do this. It's fairly straightforward, provided you set up your groups right. This is absolutely critical. You need to set up a test group and a control group of people, customers, or stores, or products, or something like that. And basically, what you need to do is you need to make sure that the period before you start running your split cell test, before you start your split cell test, you need to make sure that the characteristics of both your test group and your control group are identical, or as close to identical as you can get them. This is where actually you do need to do some statistical techniques, such as stratified sampling, for example, and making the two groups look as alike as possible before you actually start your test. And then you look at, you've got test group and control group. The other factor is something called a pre-period and post-period. There's at one point in time you start doing your testing. You start and you try to make sure that things are going the same in the pre-period for both your test and your control group, and then you look at the changes in the post-period. And you want to make sure that the only thing that changes in the post-period is the thing that you want to measure. We'll give you a simple example in a minute of just what happens when you change a price. You don't want to change a price at the same time you change your marketing, other marketing efforts, etc. You got to keep things identical. However, if you can't really do that, make sure that whatever else changes for the test group versus the control group is the same for both groups. You can't basically have one thing happen to a test group and have nothing happen to a control group, and getting a valid set of results coming out of your testing methodology. It's a simple example that I'll just show you. And this is a simple example where you change the price of a product. For example, we did some analysis where we constructed test groups and control groups. This is old data back in 2007. But in week 30, we changed the price of whatever it was we were selling to the test group. The price went up, and you track that change in price over time after the point at which you start your test, and you look at what happens. And basically, you look and see, aha, I'm selling for the higher price goods. I'm selling fewer of these products than I did for the ones that kept the same price, and that's probably not real substantial news to you, but there's some value here. Basically, the average price per unit increasing the average price per unit resulted in decreasing sales. Is that good or bad? You don't know that until you do some further calculation. What happened to your profitability over that time period? The price times the quantity that you actually sold. Did you make more money, or did you not make more money during that time period? So it's a fairly simple technique once you've set up your group properly and chosen your time period. The limitation of this particular technique is that it can only measure the potential short-term impact on things like sales and margin. If you raise your price, yeah, people may continue to buy. Some people may continue to buy your product in the short term, but they may go out and start looking for alternatives in the long run, and they may not feel as good about you because you've become a higher priced organization. Or they may think that if you raise your price, maybe you've increased the quality of your product, and they'll tend to buy more of what you're selling. So it's only good for short-term measures on things like sales and margin. So that's split cell testing. Another thing I wanted to talk about is something called marketing mix models. And marketing mix modeling is basically an overview of what marketing mix modeling is. It's a statistical measure for basically if you have a marketing program that has a lot of different things that you're trying to do, your ways in which you're trying to influence customers, TV, radio, internet, email, etc. If all of these things are happening at the same time, sorting out the impact of any one of these particular marketing vehicles is virtually impossible unless you use some fairly sophisticated statistical techniques to do it. So, but the key word in this is simultaneously modeling the impact of things that change over time. When would you use it? It's used to assess the impact of an entire marketing program to determine its both short-term and long-term impacts on sales margin, quantities, traffic, etc. It's, as I said, it's the key word here is simultaneity. If you've got a lot of different things going on, you can't sort it out with Excel. You can't sort it out by simply tracking your sales, because if you run a TV ad and 1 week and then 3 weeks later you send out a direct mail or an email campaign, and the lag, there's a lag when marketing efforts have an effect. So it tends to basically be something called regression based, but we can talk about that later. What does it measure? Well, it basically gives you a measure of the impact of any individual marketing program on whatever it is you're trying to measure, as if it were the only thing that were happening at that point in time. It's the cost effectiveness of marketing vehicles when these costs are available. Basically, it sorts out all these mishmash of stuff that's going on and says, aha, okay, if I had held email or radio advertising or in-store signage constant and just changed my TV ads, what would have been the impact of that? It may sound like an impossible thing to do, but it's not. It's exactly what marketing mix modeling does. It sorts out the impacts. I'll give you an example shortly of that. What are its limitations? Its limitations are that it requires long-term data on both business performance and marketing activity. Basically, what have you been doing, and how's your business been doing over a fairly long period of time? You can't do this if you only have data and for a year's worth of information, basically. So you need long-term accurate data, what's actually happened, and there needs to be some variability in what's going on. Your marketing program needs to actually change over time when you're trying to do this. You're trying to basically what you're trying to do here is sort out what's the impact on your customers, and that's why we're talking about this in terms of customer analytics. The ultimate goal here is how are you impacting the behavior of your customers, and that's because they're the ones who actually pay you the money to buy your products. So those are limitations. What's a fairly simple example? You got to select a dependent variable. You got to gather data on a variety of other factors. In the example I'll show you in a minute, we basically, just to show you the complexity, there were more than 100 individual equations containing 200 variables, each using more than 70,000 observations in the example you'll see. And it's basically boiling all that down to something that's usable to you. And you don't need to, in order to make use of marketing mix models, you don't need to understand what's actually going on behind the scenes at all. It's something that a person with a statistical background can actually make happen for you. And it's essentially based on a fairly simple statistical technique, at least simple to me. Regression analysis is basically the underlying fundamental statistical technique. And in this particular case, we had things that we had information on sales volumes, margin dollars, and customer counts by store, by week, by product category. That's why there were more than 100 individual equations, because we predicted each one of all the combinations of all of these and looked at how the marketing that took place impacted them. And the factors we looked at, this is a retail example, looked at the store type, the growth rates that took place, what kinds of products are being sold, how seasonality and competition impact what's going on, and we needed to control for all of those things in order to isolate the impact of the individual marketing vehicles, basically. So that's where we're, just a nutshell, what we're actually doing. And as I said, a conglomeration of many individual regression models across different markets and store groups, et cetera. This is the type of output you get out of it. And ignore the first two columns for the moment, but we were able to say that we got 9 different types of marketing that were going on for this particular company, ranging from print to radio to TV to loyalty to email marketing. And for each one of those, we were able to say, okay, how much did each one of those increase? The third and fourth columns were increased sales and margin. What were the costs of running those things? What were the percentage increases we got? And the first two columns are the most important ones here. The first column is something called the sales cost multiple. And it basically says for every dollar you spend on and spend in that particular type of marketing, this is the increase in sales you get out of it. And you can see that email was incredibly effective, and got almost, for every dollar you spent, you get almost $10 worth of increase in sales. That's nice to know. However, you also need to know what the margin is, the marketing cost, margin cost multiple. For every dollar you spend in your marketing, how much more margin did you get? How much more profit did you make from spending that dollar? And this is where things get a little bit sticky, because you basically, in certain things like a technology circular, for example, in this particular company, you could actually make quite a bit of get quite a pretty hefty increase in sales from your this is $3.32 increase in sales for every dollar you spend in marketing, but you only get 20 cents worth of a margin increase. So you spend $1 and your profits only went up by 20 cents. That's probably not a particularly good place or effective place to spend your money. So this is the type of output you can get out of a marketing mix model, essentially. And I'll get off of this because it's probably putting you to sleep looking at all these numbers anyway. There are other places that that marketing mix models can be used, and just in a nutshell, you got price sensitivity models. That's demand curves. For those of you who know what demand curves are, which probably is everybody. There's also site evaluation models if you were going to decide where to put stores. There's some stuff in an appendix that talks about that. Customer relationship management. You're looking at marketing mix models allow you to look at how different groups of customers can be impacted by different types of marketing, and it's the right way to figure out the best way to try to influence what your customers are doing. And then there are sales forecasting models and marketing strategy applications that come out of this as well. Just a fairly simple example is the demand curve on this slide. Essentially, the red line shows you how much, as you move prices from $11 up to $19 for a particular product, how much your total revenue, how much total revenue you get per product. What's the dollars you get per product? And you maximize your dollars back at roughly $13 and some odd cents, $13.40. If you were currently charging $13.28 and you increased your price to $13.40, you'd make more money. You get more money coming in. However, that's probably less importance to you than the green line, which is margin or profit dollars per store per week. If you increase your price all the way up to $14.50, you'll make the most money in the short term. And basically, this looks like a fairly simple curve, but it does not allow you to. It's a fairly simple curve to present However, if you're going to try to estimate the impact of price on sales, you've got to take into account, as with other marketing mix models, of how everything else is changing over time, and isolate the impact of price as opposed to changes in marketing, other marketing vehicles. So this is another way of using marketing mix models to analyze the impact on your customers of changes that you might make in what you're actually doing. Going back to decisions. How are you going to set your prices? How are you going to spend your marketing dollars, et cetera? So that's basically marketing mix models, summary and conclusions. You can break your models into different types of customer segments, and because things like price may have different impacts on consumers as opposed to businesses. Basically, essentially, you can use this also to help you with your customer acquisition, customer retention, and customer penetration. You're basically looking at you can break all of this up into different segments of people and customers as well. So that's marketing mix models. The overall summary and conclusions of all of this are there are a lot of ways in which analytics can utilize extensive data, the data that you have available. You have a lot of data at hand. You can use analytics to analyze it and figure out what has happened in the past and how you can influence what's going to happen in the future, and do that within different functional areas of your company, and then it's allow you to make better decisions, which will enhance your growth and popularity. Right, profitability. So that's basically what I came here to show you today. There's a lot more details behind all of these types of analyses, but we're probably going to run a little short on time to run through all of those. So basically, where'd the questions go? Oh, okay. This is. Do you want to talk about the proof of concept for those who qualify?
Yeah. So regarding predictive analytics, on a case-by-case basis, it's going to look differently to apply these solutions to your business. So what we're going to do is use the expertise of our guys in-house, like Wynn and some other members of his team, to show you something that would apply to you a little bit more, and something where you could actually visualize what these solutions will look like for your business in something called the proof of concept. So if you're interested in doing something along those lines, please reach out to me. Again, my email address is rhaddad@ironsidegroup.com, and we can talk through it and see if you and your company qualify.
And now we can open up for questions. We had a couple questions come through throughout the presentation, so I'm just going to read through those now. The first one that came in is, how does sentiment analysis fit into the bigger picture of what you just went over?
Sentiment analysis essentially is another form of data that you collect, and how people feel influence what they do, and you can incorporate that changes over time. It changes by customer. It becomes another measure of what's influencing how people behave. And there's nothing really unusual about sentiment analysis. It can be quantified and made into variables that get utilized in models, and you can understand how changes in how people feel over time influence how they behave. So there's nothing magic about it. It's a way in which we can just use another driver of whether people are going to churn or whether people are going to buy products from you. Essentially, how are they going to behave? And depending on what part of their behavior is of most interest to us, then we build that information into the models. It's another source of data, and it's becoming more and more important one as time goes on. We have the ability to extract that and bring it in. So.
All right, another question that came through was, with all the different kinds of customer analytics, where is the right place for a new customer to begin?
The right place for a new customer to begin. Basically, if you're not doing any customer analytics now, you have a couple of choices. One choice is you can hire an analytics department and build an analytics department to figure out answers to your questions. You will need some people with certain levels of expertise, subject matter experts, as well as quantitative jocks. Or you can outsource it for the short term and hire somebody to hire a consultant firm. Why would I talk about consulting firms? Hire a consultant to come in and help you do the analytics that need to be done, and also to help you build a department to do it in the long term. So the short term and long term. Do you want to outsource it, or do you want to have in-house capabilities? Those are the kinds of questions that you'll need to answer in order to figure out how to do analytics.
Thanks, Lynn. So those were all the questions that came through. So I know we're ending here about 10 minutes early, but I did want to let you all know that you will receive a copy of this presentation, as well as a link to a brief survey. It should only take a couple minutes of your time, but we really appreciate it if you could just take a few moments, fill out the survey, and that's that. So thank you all for joining, and hope you have a great rest of your day.